Hello, athletes and fans of bodybuilding. Terrick Guindy with the Mr. Olympia. Today we have four of the most relevant icons in our sport. I'm going to start with the three-time Miss Olympia, Andrea Shaw. Good evening, Andrea.
Hello. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. I also would like to introduce eight-time Miss Olympia, Lenda Murray. Good evening, Lenda.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us. Also with us, she is the Vice President of European Operations for Wings of Strength and Women's World's Bodybuilding Champion, Alina Popa. How are you, Alina?
I'm good, Terrick. It's so beautiful for me to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Alina. And also my co-host, the voice of bodybuilding, the 2000 Mr. USA's Bob Cicarillo. How are you, Bob?
What's up, everybody? And just for a quick note, 8-time, 3-time. Alina should have been 2-time. I just want to make sure that's put out there. All right.
That's
Sounds
correct.
good. We're gonna get into that in a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start this live, I'm going to say that we've lost someone that was very dear in our community. Amy Richardson has passed away, unfortunately. And all our prayers and thoughts are with her husband and the family. Amy was an IFBB Pro Women's Physique competitor. She was also a power lifter, and she was a very, very bright soul at competition, especially in Florida. Today, I had the opportunity to look at Kenneth Richards' social media, and he said, just share a picture of her on your social media. I did it privately on my own social media, but I want to take this opportunity to share a picture of Amy. She was a very good competitor, an IFBB pro, and we just want to take a moment to recognize that we've lost someone very special to us. Andrea, you knew Amy very, very closely. She was from Michigan. Can you share a few words about her?
Yes, Amy was just loud, sometimes obnoxious, but very, very loyal and super supportive. Amy's actually been with me, a part of my journey since 2017, and her being from Michigan, it was just always a joy to see her at every show. She was always in attendance at every single show on the calendar. So her and Ken have always been faithful to the mission of supporting bodybuilding. So she wasn't just a competitor on the stage. She was always there, just if you needed anything, to text me updates and say, hey, one of our mutual friends, she's getting ready to go on stage and she needs you, give her a call. Something so simple, but it meant a lot. And then to have Amy coach me through, you got this, at the Rising Phoenix every year. And I just knew that she would be there. She's always at the Pittsburgh shows. She's just the big shows. It's a big loss, but I'm just thankful for the time that I've had with her. And I'm really going to miss her a lot.
Thank you so much, Andrea. We appreciate. We know this is hard. Lenda, you also knew Amy very closely. Would you like to share a few words?
Yes. Amy and Ken, we go way back to when I had my show in Detroit. I had a NPC national qualifier in Detroit, and they were there with their company, Bulletproof. And I remember her beginnings with Bulletproof, her jewelry line. And this is before she turned pro. And she would, every year I would see her, she was like, I'm going to turn pro. I'm going to turn pro. And, when she would prepare for a competition, she was so excited. Right. And it's one of those things. It's just, when you have an athlete and they want to go pro and them, and it's really wonderful. Like when it happened, I was like just really proud of her. And I got a chance to talk to her at the Olympia for a long time. So that we're talking in December, we stood and had a long, very long conversation. She actually last year, she had a very successful year. in the women's physique division as a pro. And she made first call out on several occasions. In Tampa, I'm not sure where she placed in Tampa, but that was one of, I would say that 2022 was definitely her most successful year as a pro, and she was definitely recognized. So, that's just the first thing I thought of when I learned early this morning that she passed away.
Thank you so much for sharing your words, Lenda and Andrea. Amy will be with us in every competition. She'll be remembered. Her energy will be remembered. And to her husband, we are here to support you, the entire Olympia team, Olympia TV. And we're going to, honor Amy for as long as we keep doing Olympia TV. So thank you so much for all your contribution. And thank you for the words, ladies. Andrea, I want to go into the Mr. Olympia. You are 3-time Miss Olympia. And we were talking about the most dominant performances. And we came to the conclusion that Shawn Clarita in the 212 and Andrea Shaw in the women's bodybuilding were the two most dominant performances. Actually, Shawn Clarita put us on the spot and said there has to be somebody that was the most dominant. Is either me or Andrea Shaw. And I hesitated, but eventually I told them, I said, Andrea Shaw was more dominant than you, Shawn. I'm not quite sure I can outrun you, but I got to say the truth. Andrea, do you feel like you're absolutely dominating the stage in the women's bodybuilding category?
I feel like I'm dominating my look each year. I try to think about it from that perspective. If I go into each Olympia very confident, as long as I know that I did the work that I was supposed to do, I'm dominating over the last year's champion. Yes, it was me, but I'm still dominating over her.
Okay, so obviously you're battling against yourself. Lenda Murray, you've been on that stage. You've won 8 times. Do you have a response that is a little bit less diplomatic than Andrea Shaw? Is she absolutely dominating the stage?
Yeah, she did dominate. Second place was Angela, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. See, Angela, she doesn't have the size. She doesn't have the shape that Andrea has. And I can just go down the line. I was just looking at the top 5. Hella Trevino was in that top 5. Hella, I believe, placed third. And Margie Martin was 4th. And yeah, if you look at that top 5, without question, Andrea dominated the stage without question, because she has the size and the shape and just the overall look. It's what I call the complete package. So I can definitely say she dominated.
Alina, Popa, is Andrea Shaw absolutely dominating the women's category?
It's the same question.
Same question. I'm just trying to look for fuel because eventually there's going to be some fire.
I do believe that at this point, Andrea really has no competition. So, yes.
Hey, Bob, if Iris Kiley comes back and goes against Andrea Shaw, is Andrea Shaw still absolutely dominating, or Iris Kiley can put some heat on Andrea Shaw?
No, there's no heat. I mean, listen, Iris came back the other year. It wasn't this year. I think it was last year. And unfortunately, she didn't make the stage. So we could have actually seen that in play. But that's not even really a fair comparison. I mean, now, if we take Iris in her prime and put her up against Andrea, that's a much better competition. Personally, I think Andrea would beat her. She just has a better look, with all due respect to Iris and what she's accomplished. But yeah, there's nobody coming right now that we can see. I mean, there is a big gap between 1 and 2 right now. And that's, again, with all due respect to the other athletes, and especially the tremendous Angela Yo, who really came out of nowhere. Nowhere, and gave it a nice run, and she represented herself very well. She looked very good. And again, it wasn't close. It was a 1-2, decisively. And I haven't seen the score sheets, but I'm guessing that it was straight
Unanimous.
ones. I mean, you'd have to,
Unanimous, yeah.
yeah, it'd have to be unanimous. So no, listen, right now Andrea's in a real good place and a real good time, and I understand she's opened up a car lot on her front lawn.
Yes, she's acquired many cars. Bob, I just want to make sure I catch this on record because I think you might be in trouble here.
There we
What
go.
you're saying is that Iris Kiley on her prime against Andrea Shaw right now, you would pick Andrea Shaw any day of the week?
Any day of the week, any day. Again, just like I used yesterday, we were talking to the guys about if Samson Dauda is in 100%, Nick, Nick is in 100%, who wins? And I said, Samson Dauda, 10 out of 10. If Andrea Shaw and Iris Kyle in her prime, take her at her best, okay, are both 100%, Andrea Shaw beats her 10 times out of 10. Now, I don't say that lightly. You're talking about a 10-time Olympian here, and Iris Kyle. I don't want to take away from
down. You
no,
just
no,
said
listen,
Andrea
you know
Shaw
me, brother.
will absolutely destroy Iris Kiley on stage. You need to stand by that and eventually face Iris. If somebody has Iris, just send her a text message. I would welcome her and put her right next to Bob Chicarilla on this live.
I'll tell you what we can do. Okay. For anybody who's interested out there, go pick the best year that you like Iris Kyle, her best year, and put up the pictures right next to Andrea Shaw's from any one of these last 3 years. Andrea, is there a particular year you thought you were better than one of the others, or can we just pick any of the last 3?
I enjoyed all 3.
Well, I know you enjoyed it because you won, but is there a look that you like that? Did you think you were better the first year, the second year? If I line up all 3 Andrea Shaws from the last 3 years on stage, who wins?
This year.
Second year. Okay, so there's the challenge for anybody. Go pick out Iris, whatever year. And listen, I'm gonna further this with one more thing. I started the program saying that Alina Popa should have had at least one, in my opinion, 2 Olympia titles. That was against Iris Kyle. Now, I'm not an Iris Kyle hater, okay? But I liked what I saw that Alina brought. She knows this because we've talked about this, and I told her this at the time. All right, this was years ago now, but I told her this at the time. What she presented was a excellent, world-class, feminine-looking physique that was fuller, a little rounder, had all the muscle, had everything in all the right places. All right, in the footsteps of a Lenda Murray, a Corey Everson, those type of physiques. That's what women's bodybuilding is all about, in my opinion.
So, Bob, I want to go back to you because in the past, people had the perception that you didn't like women's bodybuilding. Is that correct? Can you elaborate on that?
No, what I didn't like was the direction women's bodybuilding was going. And me and Lenda have talked about this for years now. Listen, Lenda has had many of the same, comments that I've had. Now, the difference is she's an 8-time Olympian and a female in the sport, one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest ever, in my opinion. She always has been. I've told her that many times. Because I'm a guy, it was received much differently. Now, that said, the article that came out that this all refers back in the Flex magazine days, I didn't even write per se. It was written by Julian Schmidt, rest in peace, who was a great wordsmith. But some of the stuff he put in there wasn't even my words. It was kind of his that he kind of added in there, which, again, they're looking to sell magazines at the time. But that couldn't be further from the truth. I have a lot of close friends that are, women's bodybuilders. And again, listen, I liked it so much that I actually put a whole other women's bodybuilding category in play and proposed the women's physique division, which is around today.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, gosh, I just think that for me, it's a competition, right? But it's also like pageantry a little bit. Like I know when I see the winner, right? I know that for us, it's about, with bodybuilding, it's size, it's muscularity, it's symmetry, it's shape, it's structure, it's conditioning. But at the end of the day, and I feel like there's definitely a difference between women and men. Yes, we train hard. We train with the same intensity, right? It's bodybuilding. I train the same way, but it's my physique, so I'm going to do what works for my body. But I think at the end of the day, when I look at a lineup, whether it be bikini, figure, like I see the winner, and I don't look at the winner and say, like that person has to have ripped glutes, right? When I think of Iris, she had amazing, like she was always consistent, super consistent. I will always give her that. Just always consistent. So for me, I know people it's easy for them to go and say, well, this person was leaner. I mean, I was never the leanest at the Olympia. I was never the biggest at the Olympia. And when I saw Iris and Alina on stage, for me, it was just, it was like a light, you know? I mean, her whole presentation, her look, her overall look, and especially at the time, it was just a breath of fresh air. I could, you know, that's the best way I could put it. I was there. I remember clearly.
Alina, let me put you on spot. I know you can have a glass of wine after this if the live gets a little bit too heated. Bob Ciccarillo thinks that you should have won 2 Olympias, and Lenda Murray thinks you could very well win 1 or 2 Olympias.
Oh, yeah.
How does that make you feel? Do you feel, you know, because when I talk to you, you don't have any resentment. You're just happy that you won the Women's World Bodybuilding Championship, that you left this legacy on stage. How does that make you feel?
I never had any resentment or bitterness. I guess as I was going through the sport and doing my thing, I was noticing what's happening on stage, and I realized, and I heard many times, that you need to knock down the champion. You need to be 10 times better than the champion to beat it. Things that I didn't agree with, right? I don't I don't believe that you have to compete multiple times and to prove your spot or to be 10 times better. I think that the day of the show, if you are just a little bit better than the champion, you should win. And this is fair. Mm-hmm. And just knowing everything, I know it just didn't get to my heart. I was not bitter. What upset me was the fact that the division was taken out, but not the fact that I never managed to get the Olympia title because of the situations and the circumstances, or the fact that Iris got it. I mean, I knew that if I had a few more occasions, I was right there, I would have gotten it. But hey, it is what it is. And there is no resentment and no bitterness in that. But I have a question for Bob.
Shoot.
Bob, you said that you love female bodybuilding so much that you proposed a new division. Now,
Correct.
2013, 2014, when I competed at the Olympia, tell me, where would I have fitted in WPD?
Well, you wouldn't have fit in women's physique. I mean, listen,
Well,
you are a women's bodybuilder. What's that?
You said that you wanted women's bodybuilding so much that you proposed a new category because
Well,
women's bodybuilding was going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I got you.
To figure out where when they took away, where was I supposed to compete? At that point, I've been competing for 20 years. That was my life. That was my identity. So when that was taken away, I was left with nothing.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, I mean, you know, listen, I can only do so much in my capacity and did, you know, as the athlete's rep. So the best I could do at that time is they started taking it out because it had declined so much. Now, part of that was because the physiques they were rewarding. What I had proposed was that they changed the criteria, which I still believe to this day would have helped and would still help even today, where I would just literally change the values around. You guys remember when they put the 20% rule in years and years ago?
Yeah, I remember that.
I thought there was an interesting take, but the wrong direction, in my opinion. What they should have done was made muscularity 20% of your score, okay? And all the rest of the things, shape, symmetry, proportion, presentation, beauty, the flow of the physique, okay, how you're posing even, and that type of things, right? All those things could have superseded, because I do believe the word female in female bodybuilding has to be recognized. This is not bodybuilding is bodybuilding. I've never believed that, but that's what led to the demise of the interest of female bodybuilding. It was there when Rachel, obviously, when they first started, all the way back, when Lenda was winning titles, when Corey Everson was winning titles. It wasn't until the conditioning got a little crazy, a little over the top, right? The physiques became a little bit too masculine, and then all of a sudden interest dropped off. So just to not to make this a 2-hour sermon on the history.
Exactly. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, let me just finish with that thought, Alina. So the best I could do at the time was offer an alternative. It wasn't my decision to take women's bodybuilding out. All I could do was say, look, we need to redefine it. Okay. And we can put this in, and this can help women who like to bodybuild and do all those things. And to this day, I believe if we were to change the values around of it, could potentially see a resurgence in these physiques. The best thing to happen is that Andrea Shaw is currently on top, and that type of physique, much like Lenda's, can sustain and can be of more interest to people out there in the fan base.
You know, I just want to add something. You know, one thing that's interesting, you know, a lot of you guys know my wife. When my wife looks at a picture of Andrea Shaw, she wants to have Andrea Shaw's butt. You know what I mean?
Well, who don't?
And that's a sign. That's a sign that women are very honest.
Yeah.
They are very honest. If they don't like something, they're like, well, it's not. But when she always tells, oh my God, I want to have Andrea Shaw's butt. If I have her butt, oh my God. And Andrea Shaw is very, very, very beautiful. Very, very, very beautiful.
So
Whether you're a man, a woman, or you identify yourself as a rhinoceros, there's no chance that you look at Andrea Shaw and you don't say, wow. I want to play. Go ahead, Alina.
I wanted to say that, you know, back in the days when I was competing, I would get exactly the same compliment from women. Women always want the butt. And I would turn around and look at them and say, girls, this butt doesn't come without the rest.
Right.
I have all of it
Right.
to get that.
That's right. That's right.
But I wanna show a video of Andrea Shaw at the Olympia, and it's the funniest thing because Tim Wilkins is with Lenda Murray, and you can just tell by his voice that he's also impressed.
We loved him
So many things
and
about
Heather.
Andrea that's, makes her an amazing champion. I love that pose.
That is beautiful.
It's mesmerizing. I love that pose on her. She has some amazing shoulders and amazing bicep development.
Oh. The beauty of the muscles in motion right there.
Yes. Very nice structure, small waist. Very balanced body, upper body and lower body.
That glute ham tie-in, those hamstrings,
Yes.
quad sweep, everything is perfectly proportioned.
She's just an all-around amazing athlete. And that's the thing that we look for in when an athlete's on stage. It's just something about them, that sparkle. And she definitely has that.
Absolutely she does. The fans love her. And she's another one who's a great rep as a champion for the sport.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm so looking forward to going out on this stage and presenting the women with trophies.
And as much as you enjoy that, I'm sure they're honored to get it from you.
Yes.
You have your show,
Yes.
and you're such a huge part of the sport. And as familiar as they are with you, it's still a big honor.
Yes. Well, that's
Okay, Bob, number 3 wins. I take it back.
Hercules,
Number 3 wins.
Hercules.
Number 3. Definitely number 3 wins.
I gotta tell you something. You know, you judge the sport, and you know I've judged Andrea Shaw the last 3 Olympias, and I gotta tell you, Andrea Shaw is drop dead gorgeous on stage. She not only dominates the stage, but what she's doing, you can see that her posings are very feminine. And I think, Bob, if we had a moment where bodybuilding, you know, went down in popularity, I'm going to go as far as to say, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, Lenda, is Andrea Shaw bringing female bodybuilding back?
Oh gosh, absolutely. Yes. Yes. I mean, no question about it. I mean, I remember 2020, uh, actually at the Rising Phoenix, when a couple of the judges said, where did she come from? And I'm like, well, she's been here, you know? And so we had like, what, 2 weeks or 4 weeks going into that Olympia.
11 days.
Yeah.
It was like 11 or 12 days.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I knew it was like a short period of time. So, I mean, it was exciting when she won the Rising Phoenix. And I think we all knew that the sport was going in the right direction. And honestly, I can say that what I'm excited about with, like, for example, the women's physique division, you guys talking about women's physique, a lot of our top women at the Olympia, they're coming from that division. So introducing the women's physique division to the group really helped us.
Yeah.
I think a great deal.
I would like to add something.
I came from
that,
there.
Lenda.
I started in women's physique, or at least I went pro in women's
Right.
physique.
I mean, yeah.
So I mean, like when I see what happens nowadays with all these transitions, it's of course when you have situations like Andrea, because I remember, Andrea, you are in Canada, right? You were at
Yes.
Toronto Pro when I talked to you, and I was like, hey girl, you gotta switch class because you were in such a good shape, ripped to the bone, like really probably one of the best conditionings I've seen you at in Toronto. And you got like 7th or 8th place because you are in the wrong division. You are in physique.
That's right.
But what I
Bob
want
told
to
me
say
about it.
is that I wish that when the physique competitors, when they cross from physique to bodybuilding, I wish that they take their time to improve their physique size-wise too. That they look when they compete in the female bodybuilding division and then the women's bodybuilding division, they look and they have the size to be a woman bodybuilder, right? Because I have seen many times physique competitors coming from physique division into the bodybuilding division, bringing the same physique like in WPD and being ripped to the bone and winning. And I don't think it's fair, right?
I agree.
I think that the size, still natural size, like you gotta have a certain structure and have certain qualities to be able to gain that size and maintain femininity. Those are true bodybuilders. Sometimes it hurts me to see when women's physique come and they're so small and they're shredded to the bone and they win over. Bob, you remember back in the day? And Lenda, I'm talking about in 2012, 13, 14, when I was on stage. If a girl was too small, it doesn't matter how ripped she was
Right.
always 8, 9, 10. She would never break top 5, right? And the girls with size and structure, even if they were a tiny little bit fat, with a softer, right? They would still be bodybuilders in front of the small ripped girls.
Yes.
So that is a trend that I see nowadays when all these physique competitors come small, come ripped to the bone, and win in front of real bodybuilders. You know?
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely.
Now, listen, Alina brings up a great point here, which is that bodybuilding is bodybuilding. And like I said, the word, women's or feminine or, again, ladies, again, whatever you want to put, has to come into play. But the difference between a female bodybuilder and a women's physique competitor is muscle size. Okay? The criteria is what has to be followed. If you read the actual criteria for women's physique, it's very much on the edge right now of a little bit too much. And I'm afraid that if that continues, that women's physique will see the same thing that we saw with women's bodybuilding 15 years ago or whatever that time frame was. The general public doesn't mind a bigger girl, but you got to look feminine. You've got to look beautiful, right? You've got to look muscular but pretty. And, it's all those things combined. Okay, the minute the word ripped, actually, if you go read the women's physique criteria, which I wrote, there's actually words in there that I actually particularly put in there because I didn't want that to be judged. Words like ripped, shredded, grainy, diced, okay? None of these words should exist in female bodybuilding or women's physique. And just because it's bodybuilding doesn't mean it meets the same criteria as the men. This is where they blew it years ago. This is why Lenda, and it's great that she's on this podcast with us, she epitomized the look of what a female body. She wasn't ripped to the bone.
Never.
Much like we were talking yesterday, Terrick, right, about Lee Haney, the greatest men's bodybuilding champ and Olympian of all time. He never had a line in his ass. He wasn't shredded to the bone. He simply had the best physique out there. That's what Lenda had. That's what Andrea has. She can literally define a new era. Listen, it's Jake Wood that brought it back, but he needs help. And he needs somebody to kind of lead the charge, and Andrea's at the right place at the right time. Alina was in that spot, and that's why I thought she could have been. Unfortunately, at that point, I think they just kind of wiped their hands of it and said, let's just, it's the last year, let's get it done. There just seemed to be no interest in keeping it at that point. But that same type of look, Alina had it, Andrea has it now, and she could take it to the next level. Now what we need for Andrea is some company. She needs somebody to beat out there.
Well, Bob, so I actually, I agree with you that the overly conditioned look sometimes compromises the entire physique. And my feedback to Angela Yo, who did a tremendous job at the Olympia, is that if she doesn't come that hard and she has a little bit more of a fuller look, she could actually be a better bodybuilder than what she presented at the 2022 Mr. Olympia. And I personally loved the little softness. There was a softness, a gentleness to Andrea Shaw's physique, which is unbeatable. If Andrea Shaw is 5-10% more conditioned, I think she still wins the Olympia, but I don't think she would be as good as she was. She was very feminine because she wasn't shredded. My question to all of you guys is this, and Lenda already responded, but I want to put Alina and Bob on the spot. On my analytics on Olympia TV, by the way, if you don't subscribe to Olympia TV, you're going to have a miserable life. On my analytics on Olympia TV, the most popular woman is not a bikini competitor, is not a women's physique competitor, is not a figure competitor. The most popular woman on Olympia TV with 250,000 views on one video is Andrea Shaw. Woo! My question to you, Alina Popa, if Andrea Shaw is not there, is not competing, would we be struggling with the popularity of female bodybuilding, or are we being saved by Andrea Shaw?
Well, I think that, Andrea is literally the embodiment of the whole resurgence of women's bodybuilding, right? We must, remember how Wings of Strength was created, and we pushed for this moment. And Andrea came like a coronation on everything at the right time. So everything happened in beautiful synergy, right? Of course, I don't wish that Andrea takes a year off, because knowing her, and I know she's on the wave, it means that you're injured. So I don't want that, right? But I do believe that we started to have beautiful and good competitors, right, in women's bodybuilding. I have seen the division sustaining itself through the years, to the point where I'm really impressed with physiques. Like this past year, Chelsea Dion impressed me quite a lot with her flow and the beauty of her muscles. And that is the kind of physique that I like to look at. As Bob was mentioning earlier, a kind of physique that is a little bit flowing in a more feminine, not necessarily softer, but rounder, as opposed to androgyny that Iris Kyle's physique had, right? We do not want sharp, boxy, square, straight lines that men usually have. We want these flowing, nice lines that female have. But just to go back, Terrick, I think everything happened perfectly at the right time. The movement, Andrea as the spear of the whole resurgence of women's bodybuilding.
So, hey, Bob, C-Bum, he has increased the popularity of classic physique. In my opinion, if you take the guy out of there and he stops competing, the division would lose some popularity. Do you believe that the revival of women's bodybuilding is because Andrea Shaw has gained tremendous popularity? What would be the scenario? Would female bodybuilding be struggling if Andrea Shaw was not competing?
Well, it's very perceptive, Terrick. If you took C-Bum out of the equation, he is the classic physique division right now. All right. There are certain athletes who embody a generation. Okay. Again, Lenda did it, in her time at that Olympia stage. Chris Bumstead, Ronnie Coleman did it during his stage. Lee Haney did it during his stage. Andrea Shaw is in the right place at the right time. She is women's bodybuilding right now. Now, you can't be the sole person fighting this fight. Like I said, Jake Wood has done a tremendous service to women's bodybuilding and keeping it alive because it was gone. It was literally dead. Okay, and Jake Wood came along at that time, revived it, said, no, I like it, and I want it back in. Eventually it got back in the Olympia, great. The timing, like Alina said, absolutely perfect. But she needs help, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that somebody has to be better than her, but what you need 5 or 6 or 7 Andrea Shaws up there in various forms. Angela Yo. Okay, lost a minute. I got too many Andreas and Angelas and Alinas, and everything's beginning with an A here. Okay. Angela Yo is a great young talent, a different physique than Andrea's, but yes, she can fill out and still have a very good physique. You need more athletes like that coming in to keep the momentum going for female bodybuilding. Yes, it will absolutely stall out because you can only perpetuate interest in any division. Okay, if there's a fan base that's willing to support it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what I saw in the past and what I see that's getting better with the Olympia with women's bodybuilding. I just always wanted, and I've had this conversation with Alina. When I would go to the Olympia and I'd sit there and then I'd watch the bikini division and every single top 10 in the world. There was nothing awkward, nothing strange. Then I go to figure. Then I get to women's physique. 10 women on that stage representing nothing embarrassing or made me feel uncomfortable or made me feel like I had to explain something. But what I saw with women's bodybuilding and how it's gotten better is that there was sometimes just a place of where I was uncomfortable. I would watch the top 10 and I'm like, this is not an example for me, in my eyes, of the best top 10 in the world. And it's not about, I'm not looking for who's the most ripped or who's the largest. I'm just saying that when you come out on that stage, that top 10, you should shine, you should hold your own, even if you're 5'1" and 125 pounds, or you're 5'7" and you're 195 pounds. You should look healthy. Your hair should look nice. Your skin should look nice. The way you walk, the way you move, your presentation, you should be on point. And that was like a big problem, like a huge problem. And it shouldn't be. If you're the best in the world, the top 10, bring it. And Alina and I think how we help and participate in what we've been doing, we had to speak our mind and kind of like to some of the women, like maybe a few, pull them to the side, maybe you should change your hairstyle, that wig's not working for you. You put on some eyelashes, and then, you get some that are offended. Well, if you're offended, I'm sorry. Like, this is a pageant, end of story. I know men don't want to be considered to be in a pageant, but you are judging the physique, and I'm a woman. I am not a man. Therefore, I want to be judged like a woman. Like, I am a woman, period. End of story.
Andrea, I want you to talk to me about, you are basically the standard right now. Looking back, who was your hero coming up into female bodybuilding that you looked and you said, I want to be just like her, or women's physique?
Lenda Murray, of course. Of course. So, when I was younger, though, I was going to a little small powerhouse gym. And at this time, I was about 13, 14 years old. And it was in a little city called Centerline. And they had this huge mural of Lenda painted on the wall. And so in the leg room, every time I would go in there, I could look up and it's like she was there. And it was like, wow. It just made me really think, what would it feel like to be in the best shape of my life? And what could I do with it? And so that became my first interaction with, you know, the aspiration of competing. I didn't think I was really suited for bodybuilding back then. And then when when women's physique came along, I began to really find a fondness of Shanique Grant's physique. Her physique, again, full muscle bellies, very tiny waist, beautiful symmetry, beautiful lines, and she always carried herself with such poise. And Natalia Coelho, we're still good friends too. I just really think that they came to the stage with those nice full round muscle bellies, because again, we're women. So I think that's one thing that most women, if you are more of a feminine woman, you embrace your curviness. And that was something that really stood out to me about them.
Very nice. Hey, Bob, going back to you, this is not going to be an easy live for you, and I warned you about it. I just didn't expect Alina to be 10 times worse than me going after you, but she's Eastern European. I knew she would give you no break. Bob, what many people believe that when Kim Krzyzewski started winning, that the direction was really, you know, it was a deviation from what had been happening. Who's to blame for that? What happened? You were there. You know, can you elaborate? Why did it go in that direction? Let's not only lose some followers, let's make some enemies, Bob.
Well, you're going to lose some followers now, because ultimately it's up to the judges, right? Now, that said, okay, because people are quick to jump on that one, it's a two-part system, okay? The judges sit there and go, look, we can only judge what's in front of us, okay? So if that's what's on stage, well, somebody's got to win, right? Somebody's got to be second, somebody's got to be third. The athletes say, well, if those physiques weren't winning, we wouldn't be bringing that up there. So when we see, you know, Mrs. Ripped up there and she wins the show, well, where do you expect us to go, right? So you've got two equal parts of blame, so to say, for the demise of women's bodybuilding back in the day. Now, listen, it always wasn't like that, because when I was growing up and the Miss Olympia was created in 1980 or whatever it was, before that, the Women's World Championships and other selected shows, and Rachel McLish and some of the early pioneers of women's bodybuilding, it was very popular. There were shows that were held on their own. There probably had to be 5 or 6 women's bodybuilding magazines that were separate from the men's. So Women's Physique World, this one, I remember all these magazines growing up. They could sustain on their own. They had their own fan base. It was insanely popular. Corey Everson, Lenda Murray on covers of Muscle and Fitness and Flex magazine. The women's thing literally was its own firepower back then. Then all of a sudden, mysteriously, it kind of got to the peak, and then, like a roller coaster, here we go. The second the women started being judged with the same criteria as the men, it was over. As soon as that ultra ripped look, and listen, no disrespect to Kim Krzyzewski, right. That's a hell of a physique. But again, was it too much? Was that female bodybuilding? And the answer was no. This was not accepted by the fan base. It was not accepted by the public. Magazines started to go bye-bye, right? Everybody started to chase. Let me tell you something. There's two people on the men's and the women's side who have ruined more physiques than anybody else, not to their detriment. And it's Kim Krzyzewski and Dorian Yates in the men's. Those two people, those two champs came in there and put a physique out there that everybody started to chase. Dorian, everybody started to get 300 pounds. Got to be 300 pounds. I got to get bigger. Dorian's the champ. Kim Krzyzewski, I got to get bigger. I got to get more ripped. I got to have lines in my ass. And both of those things were to the detriment of men's bodybuilding and women's bodybuilding. Everybody talks about the old glory days, but, don't forget the infamous belly band. All of a sudden the big GH gut was kind of going around a little bit too much. And the women's physiques, again, a little bit too hard, a little bit too muscular. The worst compliment I've ever heard given to Iris Kyle was that she could compete with the men. And we've all heard that, right? Oh man, she's so good. She could literally go up there with the middleweights and probably beat a lot of them. And I thought to myself, that is the absolute worst thing you could have ever said for the sport of female bodybuilding. That should never be the case. Andrea Shaw, listen, I love you. I think you're a great champ. I think you're going to hopefully shoot to get Lenda's title, and that would be a great time. Mm-hmm. But I don't ever want to think that you can stand up there with any of the guys out there and do anything. And if you can, you're in trouble.
Me neither.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I almost wish that, I mean, because after Lenda like retired, I mean, I followed it, but not as closely. But I wish I would have followed it more closely, because when I do go back and I look at the pictures of Alina, I mean, okay, I definitely loved the look. It was very pretty, very feminine. I mean, the Miss International, it was like, wow, you know, and I'm a huge fan of Alina's, and I'm so glad Jake brought the Rising Phoenix, and that it's still around. But yeah, I mean, this is where, how do we recapture those people who maybe fell off at a certain point? And now they're, you know, we need to reintroduce something different. So that's kind of like my goal. I want to make sure that we recapture some people who used to like bodybuilding for women. And then it's like, oh, well, now that I see, you know, that it's going in this direction, I'm willing to give you a subscribe. I'm willing to watch your podcast, things like that. And we're slowly starting to hear that. Like, people will send me inbox messages and they're like, you know, I used to be a fan of so-and-so. And now that, you know, I see you, we're going to subscribe. We're going to watch, rooting you on. So I think this is going to be a collective effort of all of us ladies, to bring as much femininity to the stage. Striated glutes is not where it's at. I still hear some of these girls talk about it, and I'm like scratching my head like, no, this is not, this not what we want. But, you know, how do we change their mindset? Some of them, maybe they're still dealing with coaches with this, you know, old mindset. And it's just not what's going to be popular or you know, suitable for the direction we really want to go in.
Well, we have
Alina,
to tell Terrick, who's a judge here, that he must not be impressed with the striations on the glutes, and that not always the one who suffers the most wins, Terrick.
Very true.
Yeah, no, Alina, I'm going to tell you here that, like I said before, I like the fact that Andrea Shaw did not have striated glutes, that she was softer. And I actually would recommend Angela Yo, if she was just a little bit softer, she could have added some roundness to her physique, and I think she would have been better. I actually, Natalia Coelho, she competed as figure in Florida, and I told her, you have cross striations on your legs. You know,
Right.
you shouldn't have that. And she went to women's physique and she softened up. But I'm also gonna tell you that in the men's bodybuilding, Bob, for the longest time, we've seen so many guys that are not conditioned that maybe we overemphasized telling them, you got to come in shredded. You got to come in shredded. Do you think there was an overcompensation? We saw so many guys that were not in shape, and all of a sudden we're telling guys all the time, you're not in shape, you should be shredded. And then when we saw somebody that was mega shredded, we automatically said, okay, he's different. He fought very hard. Do you believe that happened?
I think there's 6-7 different pieces of criteria that have to be considered, whether you're judging men or women. It doesn't matter. The women have one extra one, which is feminism, right? Having a feminine physique to go along with the physique. That's why it's women's bodybuilding. In men's bodybuilding, or any judging for that matter, all the criteria has to have, they're not all worth the same amount of points, right? Symmetry, shape, proportion, size, again, presentation of your physique, how you display your physique. All of those things are taken into, or should be taken into account, but they're not all worth the exact same amount of points, or they shouldn't be. Being ripped to the bone, like Alina said, is not bodybuilding, okay? That's just starving yourself down, okay? And you got some lines. Listen, more people, and I say people because it's men and women, have ruined their physiques trying to get some lines in their ass, okay? So they sacrifice 6 things to get 1. Oh, yeah, but, you know, you got to get leaner. You're not ripped. You're not ripped. You're not ripped. All of a sudden, the shoulders are gone. All of a sudden, the fullness is gone. This is where Andrea was smart. Listen, she probably could have been ripped on stage, and you know what? You wouldn't have seen the physique that you saw. It wouldn't have been as good as Andrea Shaw as what you saw on the Olympia stage. But this is a combination of what the coaches are doing, what the federation's doing, what the judges are doing, and what the athletes are doing. The best advice I've heard you say yet, Terrick, and this is good for you on this, your advice to Miss Yo, all right? Get softer. Listen, perfect advice, right? Listen, you don't need to be more. You didn't lose because you were more ripped. Andrea wasn't as ripped as you were. Angela, right? I mean, the advice is sound. Get a little thicker, a little bit fuller, a little bit more curvy, right? We want to see a little bit more feminine look to you, that type. If you could do that, and now you're bringing another 1 or 2 in a similar notion. It is back, okay? It does to start regenerate some fans, fan base, interest, and people go, hey, I want to look like that. That's what you want. The minute it goes to a who's the most ripped competition, I don't care which division. Listen, we've had this for years. The bikinis, a little bit too hard in my opinion right now. Figure, well, we got to keep pulling it back. They're getting a little bit too muscular, a little bit too ripped, right? That's all got to do with judging and putting the right people. But on the other hand, there has to be those people on stage to put in those places.
Lenda, so if there was a time where, the female bodybuilding or, the criteria was not going in the right direction, do you believe that right now we are going in the right direction?
I definitely believe that we are going in the right direction. Definitely, without question. Because again, I looked at each division, and the women on stage made me proud. I could go 4 years back, and sometimes it was uncomfortable for me. And especially when, I've seen a couple of women that I thought, oh my God, like I don't know, was it in Romania, Alina, where the woman that won women's physique, she's from, remember Terrick?
She was from Iran.
Yes, from Iran.
Oh, yeah, she was beautiful.
And she competed in women's bodybuilding, and she competed in women's physique. And this woman was...
And she should have won in bodybuilding too.
Yes. And we were sitting there because we wanted her to win women's bodybuilding. But the reality, we had a female there that had a crazy muscular physique, and Terrick had to make that decision because the girl competed in both, and he chose the strong female bodybuilder. But does that mean she's going to get covers? And does that mean that she's no? But so yeah, I think we definitely are going in the right direction, and I also think that we're going in the right direction by the women that are showing up to compete in women's bodybuilding, the new girls that are coming in to compete in women's physique, because they see something there that they aspire to have, or feel like they belong in that division. So we are going in the right direction.
Alina, do you think, despite the judge at the Olympia Amateur in Romania, do you think we're going in the right direction?
I think, despite that judge that I know very well, I think we are going in the right direction. My only wish, to be honest, was that the criteria basing everything off of conditioning and striations on the glutes would ease off a little bit with the judges. So this would allow the women, as Bob was saying, to focus more on the fullness of the muscle, on bringing symmetry to the body, right? Because when you have to diet to get that shredded, you burn a lot, and you're probably going to burn on the spots where you last put, which is the spots where you actually need to have improvement.
Right.
So you're always going to come back with a physique that's lacking. So I do believe that it's heading in the right direction. I do believe that femininity is being emphasized, and a lot of girls are following more than before. And I just wish that judges focus more on shape and flow and symmetry than putting a condition to be paramount in their judging criteria.
Very, very well put. Well, Bob, this was not an easy live for us. Bob?
You know what? Listen, it's real easy when you talk it through. You put the facts out there, you put a little history out there for people to see and kind of, and say, oh, I didn't know that. And, I didn't really think of it that way. But as I said earlier, the athletes ultimately define the division. Andrea Shaw right now is the division, okay? The best thing that can happen right now is that Andrea keeps winning. I'm sure that's good news for you, right? And, but because she's setting the pace. Right now, everybody's chasing her, and she has a look that we're all agreeing is a good look for female bodybuilding and sets the tone for hopefully a better future. So the longer she's in place and keeps presenting that physique, the hope is is that the ones that are coming up, the next generation, aspire to look like Andrea Shaw, just like they aspired to look like Lenda Murray. And if that ever changes to something different, well, then it has a different result. When Chris Bumstead retires, whenever that day is, you better hope there's somebody behind him, whether that be a Ramon Dino, whether that be a Urs or somebody new that has that sort of look that defines a generation of athletes for that particular division. Because if not, it's wide open and it can go a whole lot of different directions, and some of them aren't that good.
Hey, Bob, let's finish this with some intensity. Is Andrea Shaw, if Andrea Shaw goes on to win 8 Miss Olympia titles, do you put her above Lenda Murray on the same platform or a little bit below?
Well, listen, let's just define it. Nobody gets put above.
Don't back down.
Nobody gets put above Lenda Murray. Okay, I don't care if she wins 15 of these. Listen, and she knows I'm consistent with this because I never put Iris above Lenda Murray. She may have more titles, but Lenda's still the greatest female bodybuilder of all time. Okay, so
Right.
Andrea, I hope I'm there calling every one of them and 8-time Olympia champion, right? The whole thing. And let me tell you something. Lenda would be the first one on her feet or up there holding your hand in the air.
Right.
Records are made to be broken. I'll tell you what. I asked Andrea this at the Olympia. Okay, now you got 3, right? How impressive is it now that you look at Lenda Murray winning 8? And you can tell them what your answer was, Andrea.
What was my answer? I don't remember.
I got to tell you what your answer. Listen, in effect, she said, good God, man. In effect, she get some carbs, girl.
Right.
She basically said winning 3. Now she can see like how difficult it is. To like 8 is crazy, right? Like, listen, 4, 5, and 6 is crazy. You got to get to 8. Oh,
Alina
thanks for leaving me
Popa.
hanging there. That was cool.
Alina Popa.
Yeah.
Can Andrea Shaw be better than Lenda Murray?
The way I look at things, it's about what do they represent at the time of their competition for the history of women's bodybuilding in that movement. Obviously, Lenda has made a tremendous impact for her time, right? Andrea is making a tremendous impact in this resurgence, right? So I think you cannot really compare apples with pears, right? Because they are both doing what they're supposed to do at this time, at the way women's bodybuilding vision is moving.
Very nice, Alina. Very
Well
nice.
said.
Well
Very
said.
nice, Alina. Very nice. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the live. We're going to do a live with all the Olympia champions. We did it with the guys, and we started with Andrea Shaw. She's Miss Olympia. And here we're going to discuss the history of bodybuilding, the criteria of bodybuilding. We're going to discuss the rules, the regulations, where we got it right, where we got it wrong, so we can push the sport forward. We will never, ever surrender and not address issues and not address things that we believe is important for the sport to move forward. I wanted to thank you, Bob, for coming into the live. You are the voice of bodybuilding. You're a historian, and you give tremendous insight. I wanted to thank Alina Popa. She is also a expert and intellectual in our sport, and I'm so grateful. I call Alina my sister, even though she gives me a hard time, and today she corrected me. But, she's a phenomenal representative. Lenda Murray is the GOAT, the Michael Jordan of female bodybuilding. She's not scared of anything, and she'll continue to fight for the division. But we're going to finish. We're going to finish and give the final word to Andrea Shaw, and your word to all your supporters and all the people that love you and cherish your victories.
I love you guys.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for watching. Next week, we're going to have Natalia Coelho coming up. And then the following week, we're going to have Missy Truscott. My name is Terrick Guindy with the Mr. Olympia. We'll see you next Wednesday, next Thursday for Olympia TV Live. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen.